I think every First Lady since Eleanor Roosevelt is measured against Eleanor Roosevelt because she did completely transform this role.
Anna Eleanor Roosevelt was born in New York City on October 11, 1884. She was born into a life of privilege, but it was a difficult childhood.
When Eleanor was 8 years old, her mother died very suddenly, and 2 years later, her father died of alcoholism. So she was an orphan by the time she was 10 years old.
At age 14, Eleanor was sent to a boarding school in London. The experience would be a major turning point in her life.
The headmistress of this school, a woman named Marie Souvestre, was actually a radical, a feminist, and she wasn't educating these girls just to go off and get married. She was educating them to be leaders.
In 1902, Eleanor met her father's fifth cousin, a young Harvard student named Franklin Roosevelt.
He was dashing and handsome and was considered a very good catch for her.
Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt fell in love, but Franklin's mother was not very happy about the relationship. She sent Franklin off on a trip to Europe to try and break them up, but of course it didn't work.
The couple married on March 17, 1905, in New York City.
They had children right away, and 6 of them.
While Franklin was serving as Assistant Navy Secretary during World War I, a rumor surfaced that he was having an affair with his secretary, Lucy Mercer.
Eleanor found love letters from Lucy.
She did at one point consider leaving, but that would have ended his political aspirations.
In 1921, Franklin Roosevelt contracted infantile paralysis, losing mobility in his legs. Eleanor cared for him and encouraged his return to politics.
In an odd way, his inability to get around freed her.
She started to get involved in political causes. She got involved with the League of Women Voters. She got involved with the Democratic Party.
The great American public has its say at the polls, and the result is a Roosevelt victory of amazing proportion.
When Franklin Roosevelt was elected President of the United States in 1933, Eleanor saw the office of First Lady as a way to expand on her previous work.
The first thing she did was create a way of having a constituency of her own. So she created a role that simply hadn't existed before.
Eleanor Roosevelt was criticized pretty heavily by some for her active role in public policy.
As First Lady, Eleanor pioneered the use of mass media to communicate directly with the public.
By having a women-only press corps, which she did, she was able to reach across the country.
Eleanor Roosevelt leveraged mass media as a way to connect with the people at a time when the nation was bleak, literally coming out of the Great Depression.
Eleanor Roosevelt further strengthened her legacy in her fight for equal rights during World War II.
During the war, she famously went to the Tuskegee Air Base because black officers, they weren't being deployed, and she insisted on going up with one of the African-American pilots, and after that they did get deployed.
On April 12, 1945, Eleanor Roosevelt's husband died after suffering a stroke early in his 4th term as president.
She wasn't there, and she learned sometime afterwards that Lucy Mercer was there.
She told reporters after he died, when they said to her, "Mrs. Roosevelt, what are you going to do now?" She said, "The story is over." But of course it wasn't.
In the years following the White House, Eleanor Roosevelt remained an active political figure. In 1945, President Truman asked Eleanor to be a delegate to the United Nations General Assembly.
Eleanor Roosevelt was very active. She really tried to force the United Nations to take a very hard, strong, active role in combating abuses toward human rights.
Eleanor Roosevelt chaired the committee that drafted and passed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She considered that her greatest achievement.
Eleanor Roosevelt died at her Manhattan home on November 7, 1962. She was 78.